Welcome to Engaging ESG, the podcast that considers what it takes to get ESG communications right and how it can go oh so wrong. It's season 2 and we're back for more. Once again, we're looking at real-life examples of ESG messaging, some that will inspire and some that may make you cringe. I'm Jennifer Owens, Director of Marketing at Flowcarbon.
And I'm Katie Callens, Lead for Sustainability at Adobe. In this 11-part series, we're delving into the complexity of ESG comms, industry by industry. We'll highlight lessons learned and share practical tips you and your team can use today as you navigate the evolving landscape of environmental, social, and governance topics. Let's get started.
Hello again, Katie. How's it going?
It's going good. The sun is shining in San Francisco, so I can't complain.
It's so nice in New York City. It's really, oh my God, this is sun's out, buns out kind of weather. I'm not that type of a person, but if I was, this would be the weather I would do it in. So, well.
For sure.
Okay, so my question for you, what is driving you to this podcast today?
Oh, well, I am very revved up for this episode
nice.
because today we're going to be looking at some of the wins and falls of automakers that we've seen recently, especially as it pertains to their sustainability messaging.
Yes, that is correct. And ironically, the person without a car is going to take the keys for this episode.
Well, hit the virtual gas.
Nice.
Or better yet, let's plug in and get started.
I love it. Well, so today I'm going to take us on a bit of a detour from our usual roadmap. I swear I will park some of the puns here from here on out, but no guarantees. But I want to start us out on some amazing messaging that was featured at a show I just went to at the Poster House in New York City. It's a museum of poster art, and it seriously is one of my favorite places to go. The curators put on these amazing shows, and one that I made a point to go see recently was an exhibit of environmental posters that they called "We Tried to Warn You." So you already kind of know what's happening when you're walking in for that.
Mm-hmm.
So the show was curated by Tim Medlin, who's an independent curator who focuses on the history of visual and material culture. And his research focuses on topics like environmental activism and sustainability, and the history of transportation, propaganda, colonialism, and migration. So, I mean, don't you just love that that is your expertise and it's all about posters? I love it so much. It's so great. So this show featured 50 years of postering in the ecological space. And what grabbed you the minute that you walked into the gallery was the curator's contention that he considers these posters failures, since most of the issues that they highlight still persist or have gotten worse.
Geez. Well, that's a bold and depressing statement to start off with, but it sounds like it grabs you.
It does. It's for sure, Now, of course, these posters were chosen because they have shaped the conversation around the environment and the climate crisis. So even if the goal wasn't achieved, it's the message that matters, and it still matters. And, and in fact, the point of the show was to consider the environmental movement as a marketing problem.
Oh, interesting. So it sounds like Ted maybe is one of us.
Yeah, I think so. I'm sure he has a very interesting take on ESG communications as it now exists in the corporate world that we live in. But of course, he's right. The goal of marketing is first, people must know about your product or service, and then you must persuade them that they actually need to use it. So with these campaign posters, and especially these ones with the environmental messaging, the early posters evoke the urgency and the emotion through really stark images, lots of gas masks and dying wildlife and skulls, and they define the visual culture that we associate with environmental activism, including, I don't know if you're too young for this one, but it was the famous image of my youth of the crying Native American surveying the polluted landscape. And I'm sharing the poster with you. Do you know this one? Pollution, it's a crying shame.
Yes, I've heard of this. I did some studies in environmental civics, And they talked about this as like kind of a turning point in terms of campaigning people for action.
Yes. And I'll put links to all of the art in our show notes so our listeners can see it. But this was a famous poster, especially people my age. Keep America Beautiful campaign in 1971. So you'll remember it was called the Crying Indian television ads. And he's looking out, he's got braids, and it's the single tear rolling down the weathered cheek of Iron Eyes Cody. But here's the thing, the man posing as Iron Eyes Cody was later, it turned out he was an Italian-American actor. And the Keep America Beautiful group behind the ad was actually a consortium of beverage companies.
I wish I could say I was surprised.
Yes.
Once again, the corporate community placing the onus of pollution on the individual rather than the actual corporates who are creating it in the first place.
Oh, well, the poster reads, people start pollution. People can stop it.
It's true. Yeah. I just go and create pollution every day in my little beverage factory in my office.
Yeah, exactly. So yes, and this is something that you have talked about before, about putting the onus on the individual.
Definitely. Yeah. So this is a classic campaign that we've discussed before on Engaging ESG when we think about, moving the shift of what the action that needs to happen onto individuals. And this, it seems to be litter bugs and away from disposable packaging. And it remains a powerful approach because advertising wants to speak to you, right? Like you are the audience, and therefore they are creating this marketing that shows how you can be part of the solution or maybe shaming you about being part of the problem. And that really harkens back to the third episode that we had in our second season, if you might remember, when we talked about PepsiCo, which was rated as the second biggest plastic polluter in the world, despite its goal to have packaging be, quote, recyclable, compostable, biodegradable, or reusable by 2025, which is next year.
Yeah, the clock is ticking on that. So we better get moving on that, PepsiCo. I hope it's going well. Yes. And has there been any movement on that? Do you know?
I know that they are moving on that campaign, but I have not talked to anyone inside PepsiCo to kind of see where the progress is. I know that they were citing that supply chain issues were something that was holding them up. And so it'll be really interesting, I think, from like a public sustainability goals perspective to see what happens as we get closer to 2025, 2030. A lot of corporate sustainability goals were set around those dates around 15 to 20 years ago. And my prediction is that some of them are going to have to get moved out because we just haven't been able to move as quickly on like a corporate operations standpoint. And also, I think there was maybe an expectation that there would be a bit more kind of policy regulation in place at this point.
Right. We are recording this after the SEC finally came through with its rules, and they were much less than people were hoping for in terms of reporting.
Yeah, no scope 3. But the fact that the SEC did rules at all can be seen as a win. And we can post some kind of updated news articles about this in the show notes. But basically the long and the short of it is we've been talking a lot about how there's been regulation coming out of California and Europe around climate disclosures. But the next one that was potentially going to happen was through the federal government. And unsurprisingly, the fact that we're in an election year, they were really trying to push that through while we still had Biden in place. And so the did go live. I think it was last Wednesday, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, in early March. And so there's still a lot to get figured out in terms of how that's going to impact. And they're probably going to get sued and blocked. But I think it just is another important signal to the corporate community that the US government, which is intractably slow, is also passing regulations and aligning it more with financial reporting, which is also how we're seeing the industry move.
Right.
Both in California as well as in Europe. And so I think it's just one more reason that this is not an if we're going towards a more strategic ESG centered world, but when.
Yes, for sure. Well, and that's the thing in talking about these images that in this episode is that this is momentum that you can, in the minimum, look back 50 years that people have been working to get this going. And so, and then also the eye of us as citizens getting sharper and sharper as to what we're seeing, because we all fell for the cry.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I covered online advertising for Ad Week, that I still get sucked in by campaigns, and that it makes us think certain ways because it's so powerful.
Yes, definitely. Some of the most persuasive folks out there are running these campaigns.
Are working on this stuff. So back to the show, it had a lot of really jarring imagery, and I think it's online and you can catch the whole show, because I think it'll be closed by the time we go live. But so for our focus this week, though, I specifically wanted to consider two posters they featured from the automotive industry. And the first is going to be a 2015 parody of the iconic ad campaign that put Volkswagen on the map in the 60s. And once again, if you're my age or older, you likely know it. I'm the daughter of an artist, and I remember he had a book about this campaign when I was a kid that I loved. It's the white background, the text over the black and white image of the Volkswagen car, and then there was a specific font, and it would say, "Think small."
Right.
And it was about selling the Beetle and kind of going against the idea of bigger is better. This is an iconic car, and don't you want to be iconic like the car? So in this version of the ad, the text, it looks just like a VW ad. It says, "We're sorry we got caught." And it's a reference to their emissions cheating scandal and a rebuke of its own. I guess they used the same text when they did their apology in newspapers just a few days before. So if you scroll down in our notes, you could see the ad. It looks just like every freaking Volkswagen ad. And you're like, whoa. And it's just pitch perfect. It was designed by the British design firm Barnbrook. And it was one of a series that were sneaked into Paris bus stops ahead of COP21 and by this group Brandalism. And they made more than 600 of these posters, not just for VW, but they were based on all kinds of iconic advertising posters. And they were snuck into bus shelters around the city. And they all at the point of calling out ecological hypocrisy at the summit's various corporate sponsors at the time.
Yeah, no, I love that kind of like guerrilla campaign. And just as a context for our listeners, so COP21 was in 2015, and this is right when Volkswagen had been caught in their emissions scandal. So you might remember that it turned out that the illegal software they uploaded on more than 10 million diesel-powered vehicles allowed the cars to pass EPA and other agency inspections while in test mode. But when driving regularly, they actually emitted more nitrogen oxide than legally allowed. And in 2009, the Volkswagen Jetta diesel won Green Car of the Year.
Green
But
Car.
that award was rescinded in 2015 when this information was leaked. And as of 2020, the scandal has cost the Volkswagen Group in excess of $33 billion, with more cases outstanding. So yeah, this is a huge scandal. It was at the time. I remember I was in business school right around this, and we did some like case studies about it and just like the impacts to reputation. And yeah, I remember I had a colleague in like one of my working groups who was German, and you could just tell he was just really disappointed.
Yeah.
Like he didn't emote a lot. Great guy, but didn't emote a lot. But like he clearly was very sad about this. And I just remember being like, yeah, no, this is like, I mean, I think we don't have this as much today in the US, but there's regional brands in places like Europe that people are really proud of. They really align it to like their sense of, you know, their countrymen and everything. I think Volkswagen was one that people were really proud of. And after this, it's hard to.
It really was a hit.
That. Really
that
big
left
hit.
a mark.
And totally. And I think this poster does a really great job in kind of catching your attention, getting the message across. And, you know, the important idea here is less to draw hearts to green causes than to really kind of gird minds against greenwashing, just to like show how oblivious it can be or obvious when you put it in their own kind of traditional formatting.
Right. And that an apology ad isn't enough.
Yes, exactly.
Well, okay, so I have another one to share from this exhibit, and this one is really odd. And honestly, I went around the exhibit and I came back and I kept kind of like, I just want to hear what you think. So scroll down.
Okay, I'm scrolling down. Oh no.
So, yeah. Okay, I'm going to
Wait, so is
describe
this
it.
an actual Lexus ad? No, this can't
Yes.
be. This
No,
can't be
it
real.
is. It is the image of a woman in a fancy pantsuit and high heels, and she's standing. It's in like deep in the ocean, and she's standing on the stern of a luxury speedboat that has a sign on it that says "Save the Whales." She's got a megaphone. She's wearing fancy sunglasses. You can tell when they're fancy. And she's driven by a muscular man in a t-shirt and a captain's hat. And she's posed as if she's speaking out to the whaling ship in the distance that is literally trailing blood in the water behind it. And it reads, "For those with environmental awareness," and $72,000.
Oh my God. Oh God. I feel like a little sick to my stomach looking at this, honestly.
So this was created, this was a real ad created by Ogilvy and Mather's Buenos Aires office in 2017. And according to the poster house, it was a tongue-in-cheek advertisement, you get the joke, that inadvertently, this is quote, inadvertently makes the point that green consumerism is for the affluent, showing a well-heeled couple protesting a whaling ship aboard a Riva speedboat that incidentally costs $500,000 and uses much more fuel than a Lexus.
What?
And the exhibit noted too that a 2023 report backed by the UN pointed out that the top 10% of individual polluters, including maybe this couple, produce half of the greenhouse gas emissions. And Lexus's parent company, Toyota, is the largest maker of hybrids, which before EVs that was the way we were going to be all environmentally, the small environmental cars. And so my question to you, talented, smart woman, how is this for getting your message across? If you had a big ad budget to spend, is this how you would roll?
No, definitely not. Like bloody whales are never going to be the option. I mean, I get what they're saying. I guess what they're trying to do is like if someone sees the picture of the woman and the man, be like, oh, I want to be that kind of activist. And that's like, and so drive our cars. I don't know. It's incredibly disturbing.
It's very tone deaf. I mean, it's so wealthy people can, or are we calling upon wealthy people to protest whaling? I don't
I
know.
don't know.
So, well, in 2022, Toyota's CEO made a bunch of public comments questioning if EVs were really more sustainable. And he doubled down on hybrids. You know, they're the leading maker of hybrids. And it caused a lot of backlash and they got hit with reputational damage.
Yeah, I mean 2022, that's definitely a failure to read the room. I feel like Toyota is known for their Priuses. They were like one of the first to do hybrids and EVs, and you would think they would use that to keep ahead of like growing EV expectations, but being dismissive, that can really destroy consumer and investor trust and really probably made them lose a lot of that confidence.
Yes, that you're our go-to for. I was listening to a speech recently, and they're like, the whole point is to make the buyer the hero in the situation. You know, like that by buying
Yes.
your product, I am emboldened and making a difference and being a good steward. And that's not how you do it. And denying reality, never a good strategy. But since then, Toyota seems to have course corrected, and their new CEO is accelerating the EV strategy now, though they have lost ground because there's so much more competition now. There's a slew of automakers. GM has committed heavily to EVs, Mercedes. They've set ambitious all electric targets for 2030 or beyond, which is great. But it's important to take a moment to recognize that such top line commitment messaging can gloss over massive supply chain issues that come with like the batteries with lithium extraction and battery recycling, all that kind of stuff.
Totally. I actually think Volvo has a great social media presence, really highlighting its circular business model, reuse, remanufacturing that gets to some of these complex issues that we can have with EVs. We recommend checking it out. They have some short videos that really take you inside the recycling process at their factories. You get specific and technical, not vague aspirations. And I think people are sometimes worried about getting into the details like that.
Yeah.
To the specifics, but I honestly really love to see brands do that. It helps people understand the actual efforts and trade-offs that are required to make change happen. What is that? There's like that statement that says details are universal or something.
Oh, I don't know. But I
I'll have
already
to look
kind of
it up,
love
but
it.
it's one of these things about like making it really specific is universal or something. I think sometimes people worry about like making it too much about exactly what's happening and kind of generalize as a way of reaching their audiences. But what
Yeah.
you find both in like narrative storytelling as well as in these types of kind of corporate storytelling, like the more detailed and specific, people will actually find their own ways of relating and understanding whether that's a connection with
It's the My
cars.
Big Fat Greek Wedding scenario
Yes.
where everyone can
Yeah.
see themselves in that very specific family, right? That
Totally right. Even if you have no Greek family members and no one that uses what do you use? Bleach to take
Windex.
off warts, Windex.
We sprayed everything with
Right,
Windex.
right. You can like have that relatability of family members. I think there's a lot to be said around that in terms of like getting into specifics about challenges and trade-offs, right? Like
Right.
everyone who's trying to navigate this new world is having to do that in different ways. And I think what's nice about this form of messaging that Volvo does is that it really shows that you can't just fix the message. If it doesn't align with real strategic shifts and how you're running the business, the comms have to reflect tangible progress of that company.
Yes, for sure. And so there's of the Ford F-150 Lightning, its
Mm-hmm.
marketing has been really sharp. It's been showing like they have this iconic pickup truck going electric, the 150. That's a way to signal major strategic transformation. And then they also just announced a huge, like $3.5 billion EV investment in Michigan.
Oh, wow.
So they've done their vehicle launch with a focus on consumer facing language, focusing on what matters most for people's lives, saving money on gas, cleaner air for the kids. It's very relatable and specific. We'll share this in the show notes, but I really love the way too that the way that Volvo announced its plans to be a fully all electric car company by 2030. They did the ultimate safety test. It's very funny about what is the ultimate safety test. So I'll leave you to watch that because that's pretty funny.
Oh, great. I'm looking forward to that. I do think people wonder if there is a place for kind of humor and levity in these types of
Mm.
communications. And I would say there definitely is. Apple did a campaign last year where they basically like invited Mother Earth
Oh,
in
yes.
for a like we can also share a link to that to like do an executive briefing session, and it was great. I mean, they highlighted all of the sustainable parts of their product, but they had like an actual actress come in and act as Mother
And
Earth. And
call
so,
them on it. Like, come on, you could do better than that.
exactly. No, it was really good. And so I do think, of course, it needs to be tasteful, but it is true that you can use humor effectively. So I'm excited to look at that Volvo video.
Yeah.
And I think what we're talking about today is the automotive industry. So it's worth noting that EV sales have really surged with the help of government mandates,
Yeah.
consumer support. There's also improving batteries and infrastructure. Bloomberg forecasts that EVs are headed for another record year in 2024, with more than 14 million sold, up 35% on last year. And while we're seeing some sales lagging in the US compared to Europe, they did cross the 1 million mark in late 2023 and are paced to continue climbing more than 40% from 2022 levels. So this is clearly a trend that's going to continue, especially as gas prices continue to increase.
Right. I mean, and like any new product market, it's going to go up and down. But the fact that Mercedes and General Motors are aiming to produce only electric vehicles by 2030, that's Mercedes, and 2033 for GM.
Mm-hmm.
Tesla says it's aiming to produce 20 million passenger EVs by 2030. It sold its 5 millionth car late last year. I mean, these are some big numbers. And beyond EVs, the automotive industry as a whole is working to become more environmentally friendly. Between 2006 and 2021, emissions from car manufacturing in the European Union fell by more than 45%.
Wow.
And in the 9 years leading up to 2021, the amount of CO2 that new cars emit has been cut by 22%. But it's a long way to go. We've talked before about the transportation sector being the worst. So it's big, and it's 15% of total CO2 emissions in the US. So like all these things, the direction's going in the right way, but we just got to get rid of these cars belching emissions into the air.
Definitely. And I think it's important to point out that by moving to electric vehicles, we're not just kind of solving all the emissions
Right.
of the transportation sector. The switch to electrification is part of the answer. But first of all, from a battery perspective, right now there isn't enough lithium in the world to provide the number of batteries needed to power all these electric vehicles. And lithium mining is hardly a green business. There's definitely some human rights issues involved. And in South America, unfortunately, it's a major contributor to desertification. And in terms of circularity, only 5% of lithium ion batteries are recycled globally, whereas the World Economic Forum, or WEF, predicts that recycling could reduce the annual demand of raw materials by about 7% in 2030. And a third point I will make on that is that just because cars are being driven on electricity doesn't mean that that's green electricity, right? No matter where you plug in your car, it depends on what is the energy mix of the state that you are in. In California and New York, we do have like pretty high renewable portfolio standards for states, but if you're plugging in an electric vehicle in different states or different countries, you don't know how much like additional coal-fired power plant that is contributing to, right? So it's all kind of a balance. And this is why we talk a lot about, you can't just have progress of one industry. They need to move in parallel, in tandem, because they're so interconnected.
And that the authenticity about talking about all this, it's the pressure on the marketers that we help our companies, our clients. And when we're talking about either our employers, our end users, it's to figure out how to navigate how we talk about this, how the decisions and the choices that need to be made, and how to do it authentically, how to tell the story of our journey.
Exactly. I recently saw a great quote that said, "Today, clear is the new clever." I really like that because I think what it gets to is the fact that the stakeholders you're trying to speak to, they want to see tangible impact, and that's really not helped by buzzwords. And we see that there's, a long road ahead for the auto industry, and some companies are making really demonstrable progress and talking about it effectively. But when it comes to communicating around critical issues like the climate crisis, there's so many different ways to do it, and really aligning that with the values of your company and really engaging that key audience, meeting them where they're at is important.
Well, and what's so particular about this industry, not barring me, who doesn't own a car, but the majority of Americans, I think they do. I don't know what the numbers are, but it's got to be pretty high. But so it's a very visible sector. So there's a lot of potential to model productive ESG conversations for other industries as well. The ones that we've talked about, like shipping, that aren't seen as readily, parked out my window on the street.
Yeah, I know people have much more of like a personal stake because at one point in their life, they're probably buying a car for them and their family.
I did buy a car earlier in my life. I'll say that.
Okay. So at one point you were a car owner. Great.
I was.
We'll let you stay in the conversation.
Okay, thank you.
But it's true. I do think it is a lot more relatable than some of the other kind of difficult to abate industries we've talked about this season. And so there's even more opportunity for consumer education and impactful action from these companies that can really reverberate out into the industry.
Yes. So, well, on that note, we would love to hear what you're learning in your own sector, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm. We know that everyone is out there trying to make sense of this quick changing world of ESG communications, and every misstep and success we think really provides learning opportunities for all. So let us know what you're learning about and what you want to hear about next in a future episode. Shoot us a note at engagingesg@gmail.com. And we may feature your lesson or mishap in a future episode, and we will change your name if you are too embarrassed.
We completely will. And as always, keep engaging. Thank you for joining us on Engaging ESG. Have a question for us to consider or a strategy you'd like us to cover? Email us today at engagingesg@gmail.com.
Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe to Engaging ESG today. It helps us grow, and even better, be sure to share the podcast with your favorite sustainability, diversity, or social impact colleague. And until next time, keep engaging.
This podcast is part of the Sound Advice FM network. Sound Advice FM, women's voices amplified.